The United States Heritage Economic Freedom Index has ranked the United States 25th overall. We were 8th in 2008. What went wrong, and how do we right this ship?
What went wrong is government. The far left is making a determined effort to turn the United States into some version of a European stagnant economy. And they are relentless in every way. They are practicing what you might call modern socialism. You know, the socialists in the days of old thought you had to seize assets, nationalize things. The modern socialist is much smarter. Those socialists realize you don't need to seize things, you just make sure you regulate them in a way in which their existence depends on the whims of bureaucrats and Washington politicians. And you see this in the case of our president. You know, he still makes statements occasionally, but it doesn't matter. The far left runs those bureaucracies, those so-called independent agencies. And you see the regulations everywhere, whether it's forcing us to use EVs when only about 1 out of 10 want to do it. You see it the war on fossil fuels. You see it on the war on shower heads, air conditioners, gas stoves, and everything else. Dishwashers now takes 10 hours to do what a dishwasher could do 1 hour a few years ago. Anything that makes life worth living and more pleasurable, there again. And you see it in New York City in pizzas, for crying out loud. They're now going after pizzas made from wood-burning and coal-burning stoves, which have been around for decades. They say, this is to save the environment. No, it isn't. It's to shaft New Yorkers and force them to move. However, they now want a war on air conditioners, so if you do move, you're going to sweat to death in places like Texas and Florida. But in the thing about New York, and I think this epitomizes what's happening in terms of the loss of freedom. On the pizzas, they say, well, they emit emissions, you know, carbon dioxide. However, as somebody pointed out, John Kerry's aircraft, if you take those emissions, over 100,000 tons a year, it would take a typical wood-burning stove 849 years to match the emissions of what John Kerry does in 1 year, flying around telling us how bad we are. And in the days of old, as you know, in medieval times, you could buy, when the church was corrupt, you could buy what they call indulgences. And that is, if you were a sinner, you could make a contribution, and that would guarantee you a smooth ride to heaven. So what they do, the modern version of indulgences, is they say carbon offsets. What are carbon offsets? They say, we're making contributions to study climate change. Doesn't wash. You are emitting, period. Just as those sinners were sinning, period. And no amount of money was going to get you around it. But it just all goes to show they all want central planning. They all want low growth. They don't care about growth rates. They care about control. And you see it in the Federal Reserve. It is accepted by even many conservatives, the idea that the Fed can control and guide the economy. They can't. How central planning doesn't work. And yet they manipulate interest rates, which is a form of rent control. We know rent control, what that does to a real estate market. Well, look what they did in the last 15 years. 0 interest rates, free money. Governments loved it. The politicians loved it because they could spend and the cost of the debt went down. It'd be like charging $10,000 to your credit card and the monthly payment went down. They loved it. And then inflation comes along and oopsie daisy, you got a crisis on your hands. Companies, free money. A lot of them borrowed to fairly well. Now they're in trouble. Consumers, a lot of them are now in trouble. So the reason the index is declining, and I'm surprised we're still number 25, and then I realize a lot of other countries are doing crazy things too. So it's not as if it's a wisdom index, it's a measure index, not a wisdom index. And this is why the 2024 elections in conclusion are so important. Where is the United States going to go? Are we going to go forward with the kind of principles and policy that made us a nation that attracted people who wanted, as Lincoln put it, to improve their lot in life and create great things and do great things? Or are we going to become a stultifying where no risks are taken, you stultify, the bureaucracies multiply, and we stagnate and we continue to lose freedoms?
If we look at the current status of the world, Steve, is there anywhere that you look at it and you say, they're doing it right, we should emulate some of their policies?
I think the answer is right here in the United States. Dickens had the tale of two cities. Here we have the tale of two states, or two groups of states, red and blue. This is the virtue of the U.S. federal system. is that you have a number of states pursuing low taxes, pro-business, individual opportunity, parents now in many states controlling the money for the education of their kids in schools, so you can choose anything, anywhere you want. And so this is going to make a sharp contrast to 2024. Red state versus blue. And this is why I'm optimistic about the U.S. once we get past 2024, is precisely we have the largest states like California, Florida, Tennessee, and others showing that individual freedom, foundation of this country, is the way to go. And Gavin Newsom, governor of California, handsome guy, that's about it. How to burn a state down with bad land management, how to create an artificial water crisis. California, this is an aside, this is out of the stupidity of expert regulation. They flush every year half of their natural rainfall into the Pacific Ocean. Only 10% of that annual rainfall goes for commerce and for residential use. 40% for agriculture, the rest is wasted. So when you hear about a water crisis, no, that's a politician regulatory crisis. So wherever it is, burning land, electricity, what's that? Any high taxes, driving people out. He wants to run on that? Come on, guy, we're ready for you. I don't care who the nominee is.